African war on the colony and occupied more than a third of the colony. Every activity was stopped. Everybody had only one thing: find Boukman and stop this. And we had no weapons. They had the guns. They had the cannons. They had everything. And yet, the fear.
So Boukman, one of the great leaders, he was eventually captured. He was eventually killed. And when they got Boukman, they wanted to make an example out of Boukman so they could scare all the other people from rebelling. So the legend was they got Boukman's head, decapitated him, and put his head on a stick and put it out in the public so that everybody could see it as a way to scare them. But at this point, people got rid of that fear of dying. So the rumor was people would walk past the head, see the head and say, they would rub their head and say, we're going to carry on the revolution.
One of the fascinating things about the Haitian Revolution is how little pride human beings outside the African diaspora have taken in it, which is fascinating to me, because this is an event of universal human significance, the only successful slave revolution in the whole history of humanity. In all the millennia of slavery, they've been from Greece to Rome to the Ottomans to the Abbasids. No one's ever had a successful slave revolution.
The next Haitian leader who would take the revolution to the next level was the great Toussaint Louverture.
He was raised by a woman from Dahomey. A lot of our people who were born here learned to speak different African languages and got the history of the places that whoever was teaching them came from. Toussaint might not have been from Dahomey, but being that the African woman who adopted him here was from Dahomey, then he's trained and raised as a Dahomean.
If you come from Africa, you have a militaristic aspect to your environment. Dahomey, as we know today, Benin, was one of the most warlike culture. That's where we get the term Amazon women, Amazon warriors, because of the women warriors of Dahomey. On television, they make you think Amazon women come from someplace else. But these are you go to Benin and you can go to the museum and see statues of these women and so forth, these women warriors.
Toussaint is born on May 20th, has a very different, even in slavery, their experience is very different. He was a submissive person in slavery. He had slavers who kind of like him.
It was believed that Toussaint Louverture had been free from the age of 45. We now know he was free from about the age of 30. So he'd been a free, privileged African, if you like, in as much as that can be the case in a slave society, for quite a long time before the revolution. He was heavily Christian. He could read and write. He was very Europeanized. And in many ways, that determined his leadership, his experience of slavery, which was said to be, say, less harsh than someone like Dessalines, and his being free for so long. He constantly tried to placate or make peace with France.
Toussaint was an enslaved African who became a free African at some point in the process. I don't know whether he bought his way out of freedom or was granted manumission, because all of the slave society seemed to have put in place some process of manumission for the enslaved persons. And so he became a member of the French military. And he was the first African to become a general in the French military.
He became a great general. But what he's noted for is that before he even went into fighting, he made sure that his enslavers were off to America, okay, because he didn't kill them. And he always really had an affinity for the French.
He was operating in very difficult circumstances. I mean, it's not as if black people in Haiti had natural allies in the hemisphere. They had antagonists in the hemisphere. With regard to Cuba, which was controlled by the Spanish, that was an antagonist. With regard to Jamaica, controlled by the British, that was an antagonist. Of course, the United States was not altogether friendly. And then, of course, there was the French. And so he was maneuvering, aligning with one power against another power.
In 1802, Napoleon sent one of his generals, Charles Leclerc, over to Haiti so that he could try to bribe Toussaint into turning on some of the other Haitian leaders.
Early on in May 1802, he is speaking to Toussaint. He sent for Toussaint. Toussaint came, and in the room there were 2 chairs, a table. On that table, 1 million francs. And he said to Toussaint, "This money is yours." And Toussaint said, "Well, what do I have to do for it?" He says, "Nothing. Just bring me Dessalines' head." Toussaint put both his arms on the money, and he says, "If it is Dessalines' head that you want, you may as well cut both my arms right now."
He also develops a mindset that I'm respected as a French successful soldier. And so it was to his detriment that he thought that the military relationship that the French had for French soldiers would allow him to survive their imprisonment. And they don't apply that military standard to African peoples.
Napoleon understood that Toussaint wanted to get that respect from the French. Toussaint really, really wanted that respect. Toussaint really wanted to be accepted by the French military. Toussaint wanted to be accepted by the French elite class. And Napoleon saw that, and Napoleon played on that.
So then, little by little, Toussaint became the top guy here, period, militarily and politically. And that's when he's going to do a constitution. He's going to have a constitution written and ban slavery. Of course, that was what brought his demise too. At that point, when Napoleon received the constitution that Toussaint produced here, he is vexed to the last degree and decide that Toussaint must die.
So Napoleon wrote letters to Toussaint inviting him to come over to France so they can negotiate, so they can talk. Napoleon stepped to Toussaint like, "We're the same. We're French generals. We're French military men. We're French." And Toussaint fell for that, and when Toussaint went over there, they captured him, put him in jail, and he died in jail. Now, Dessalines would not fall for that trick. He knew how brutal the white supremacists were.
And of course, you know the sad story of his end, how he goes thinking that he's going to negotiate with his French antagonists, and they arrest him and bundle him off to Europe, where he dies, and where, of course, he utters the immortal words that his death will not stop the revolutionary process. And in fact, he was correct, because it's carried on.
In the course of fighting Leclerc, who was the brother-in-law of Napoleon, who had come down to head one of the armies, Toussaint get captured. I think this is 1803 or 1802, 1803. And then he's taken to France, where he's really starved to death. They said he died of maybe tuberculosis. They starved him to death. And that's when Dessalines assumed the leadership of the army. At this point, the whites, who had now been given a kind of a republican freedom, wants the black folks to go back to the plantation, go back to your status quo. And Dessalines said that's not happening.
So Napoleon is known for exclaiming that it wasn't so much the economic adventure. He said we have to stop the forward movement of blacks in the world. Because remember, when he got into Egypt, and Count Volney wrote his book, Ruins of Empires, telling the French and telling the world, the very same people that we are enslaving and at war with in Haiti and Martinique and St. Lucia and Tobago are the very descendants of the people who built the pyramids that we are copying all their work.
Sent his brother-in-law Leclerc with the new expedition in February 1802 with a clear mission: capture the 10 black generals, send them to France. And once you do that, you could slaughter the entire population of blacks on the island. Don't worry, Africa still has plenty. We'll go back and get more.
Jean-Jacques, at the end of the day, he didn't like the idea of like Toussaint going to France, you know what I mean? It was like, yo, I'm telling you, this is not gonna work out. But in the dungeon though, Toussaint always says something, and they teach us this at a young age. And these are not the exact words, but this is the meaning of it. It's basically, I'm in this dungeon, you could do whatever you want with me, but the seeds already have been planted.
Rochambeau was a French military general, famous even by the standards of 18th century slavery for his incredible brutality. So when the French realized they cannot win back the island from these rebellious Africans, they decided to embark on a war of extermination. That was the official command. Just exterminate them and we'll replace them with new Africans. So to that end, Rochambeau was tasked with that extermination.